now 5:31 p.m. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Work Session of Monday, January 6th, 2025. Did anyone sign up to speak on any item listed on the work session agenda?
No one signed up. Please proceed.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is report on the City Council meeting decisions from December 12th, 2024. Is there anything further than what was in our packet? No? All right. And then we'll move on to a review of the public hearing items.
All right, good afternoon. Get this set up here. Okay, good afternoon. There were no item, the only item on the consent agenda is the minutes. There were no plats. So with your permission, I'll just, unless you have any questions about the minutes, I'll just go ahead to. Oh, okay.
You can go ahead, yeah, please.
Okay. Items number 3 and 4 are companion items. With your permission, I'll kind of take them one right after the other.
That'd be great.
Okay. So it's 2024-412-CP. It's 4105 Esther's Road from Regional Commercial to Community Village. Staff recommendation for the comprehensive plan amendment is for approval. There's been one response in support and one in opposition. This property may look familiar to most of you. It's at the corner, the southwest corner of Walnut Hill and Esther's. You have 161 on the other side here. This property came back early part of last year with a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning case. The zoning case was ultimately postponed indefinitely, and then they brought back a new site plan, which you'll see in a moment. That triggers the site plan and the zoning case coming back. It doesn't necessarily trigger the comprehensive plan amendment zoning case, comprehensive plan case coming back, because nothing changed on that. So in order to kind of get a new package all together and see it all together, they filed a new comprehensive plan amendment case, so you get to see everything again kind of in tandem. So the comprehensive plan amendment, this is currently shown as regional commercial over here, and they're asking to go to community village. And community village is basically a low to mid density kind of designation for mixed uses. The zoning case is 2023-110-ZZ. Again, this was originally postponed at council way back in April. They came back in, they met with staff, they came back with revisions in October. They made subsequent revisions to that, and now it's here today finally. So they're asking for, again, SP2 for mixed use, generally site plan for mixed use, and 161 overlay with variances to parking setbacks, distance from outside dining, and the required minimum amount of commercial uses in a mixed-use development. Staff's recommendation for the comprehensive plan amendment was for approval. The recommendation for the zoning case is for denial. I'll explain that in a minute. Again, we had one response in support and one in opposition. Again, you just saw the aerial photos. So, and then the one opposition is over here off of Marcilla Court. So it's a generalized site plan, so there's not a whole lot of detail on this. But basically what they are looking to do is a mixed-use development that would be, originally it was in 2 phases, now it would be a single phase, and it would be basically 2 buildings. The main building would be the multifamily and mixed-use building here. There'd be some mixed-use commercial uses over here along the front over here. And then there'd be this standalone building with a patio outside over here for outside dining. It's within 300 feet of residential, with single-family residential. That's the reason for the variance for that, because this might be a patio with outside dining. Originally, this was going to be about 5 stories across the board with a kind of a flat top and everything. Now it's going to be pitched roof. It's going to be a variety of 3, 4, and 5-story. The 3-story on the Estes Road side, where it's more compatible with the adjacent townhomes and other multifamily, and then 4-story, and then 5 stories you get to the intersection and towards the 161 side. This is the applicant's illustrative elevation. Again, you're not approving this, but this is just to give you an idea. So this is looking from Walnut Hill. So this would be the Estes side right over here. And this would be the 161 side here. As you can see, there's quite a bit of topography, so you see how they handle that by using the different number of stories on different areas. So proposed unit mix, again, this they've got down to a little over 400 units now. The total commercial in the main building would be 12,900 square feet, and the second building 7,440 square feet for a little over 20,000 square feet. Originally, they had 2.84% commercial in the version you saw back in March, April, and then this version now has about 3.9% commercial. The minimum amount in order to consider it mixed use, according to the ordinance, is 10%. So one of the things that they're requesting is a variance to allow it to be considered mixed use with 3.9% as opposed to 10%. Since it's mixed use, so they're kind of, for the most part, get to kind of describe their own development standards. So they have a variety of standards here. There's the April proposal is here in the orange, and the current proposal is over here in blue. Overall, we think this is a better product than what they had the first time around. They do have the standalone commercial building for the restaurant with the patio. We think that's actually a good idea. Maximum height is actually, originally it was 5 feet to top plate line, and it was a flat roof. This is more of a pitched roof, so 55 feet to the top plate line with 3, 4, and 5 stories instead of being 5 stories across the board. A little less imposing on the adjacent neighborhood. Parking ratios are the same. The density is down from being 65 units per acre down to 43 units per acre, so they lowered it substantially. Variances, they are still requesting some additional variances, but less than what they had in April. They have, again, they had 2.84% or 15,000 square feet of commercial uses in April. They have 20,340 square feet now. They are no longer requesting a parking setback variance, so there's no more variance compared to April. Back in April, they were requesting 1 space per 300 square feet for commercial parking and a basically a 60 parking space variance. They're now have 1 space per 200 square feet for all types of commercial uses, which would be 102 spaces, so it's an 8-space variance for the commercial uses as opposed to 60, so that's significantly improved. Again, a good portion of this parking is in garages. They have a little bit of a variance on the interior landscape parkway. The trees will comply. They have a little bit of reduction in the size of the interior parkway. And then the outside dining is 150 feet, 100 feet from single-family lots to the north, so it's a variance right there. Again, you have the subject property from Estes Road, and you can even see from this photo kind of how it slopes down towards 161. And then you have the addition, the adjacent residential to the north over here, and across the street, the townhomes and the multifamily. And the applicant does have a much more detailed presentation of their product and what they're planning to do. I'll let them do that at the evening session, but I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
I don't have any questions.
Oh, the question I got is, you say it's going to be 87 feet to the peak, correct? 55 to the plate line, 87 feet on the high side to the peak?
87 feet to the peak of the roof. So the way we measure height when it's a pitched roof is the midpoint between the eave, the top eave, and the top peak.
What
So-
has,
So for us, that's 55 feet. In order to kind of help you understand relative to everything else, that's why I put in the 87.2.
okay, so my concern is that we have passed some stuff in here before that seems to be creating a lot of issues with our local first responders, fire, et cetera. Is this something that they've commented on to address?
They will have to meet all code. Again, this is a generalized site plan. So anything that they're trying to build at the building permit stage would have to meet fire code. So if it didn't, they're not going to get approved for it by fire department at the building code. None of this, just because they have the ability to build at, to 87 feet peak, if there's a fire code that says, no, you can't, and, given the circumstances of this site, this portion of
I
the
just-
lot, you wouldn't be able to.
I know some of the things that's been approved out of here that we didn't really think about is some of our fire equipment and stuff like that being stretched and the safety of the, the citizens when they get into it. So I was just curious on that.
So when we have, excuse me, SP1 detailed site plans, I mean, all of these go through what we call tech. It's our tech committee and all the other infrastructure departments. So they see all of these. At the SP1 stage, they might get a little more detailed in terms of the layout and the driveways, that type of thing. And SP2, it's typical that these are handled at building permit. But they see every proposal that comes through.
Okay. And the second question I got is that we're moving it, y'all guys are saying that y'all approve moving it from regional commercial to community village, but yet we're denying what they want to do. What is the city's idea of what needs to be there?
We would support this if it were meeting the 10% commercial.
With the
basically.
variances that they're requesting, if it met the 10%?
But just not that variance?
Not,
more
yeah, we
likely.
can't, yeah, the primary sticking point for us is not meeting the 10% or, really coming close to it. It's 3.9%, that's, a bit much for us for us it's a stretch to call that mixed use at that point.
Really becoming multifamily
But if
at
it
that
were a
point.
true mixed-use product, in fact, if they met all of the requirements of a mixed-use product and didn't ask for any variances, they wouldn't need a comp plan amendment or a zoning case because it was allowed by right. So it would just go straight to the building permit and platting stage. But in this case, they're asking for a few variances that are, again, less than what they were asking before. But the main sticking point for us, again, is that number right there.
Currently, this property is entirely zoned for commercial, right?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah, it's zoned for commercial, but they're asking to change it to this community village, which would still retain some of that commercial aspect, but 10% is what would be required for that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. First of all, I really appreciate that the developers have scaled this back tremendously from the April case, because I think it feels less dense, and we're calling it a low-density development, but it doesn't feel low-density to me, particularly the way it looks on the five-story side. And as you go down 161, to me, has so much more traffic. And on that side of the highway, it's all single-family homes, and now all of a sudden, we're putting an apartment complex in the middle of it, multifamily, pardon me, in the middle of it. So for that reason, I would say I'm leaning to denying both the comprehensive plan change, because I don't know why you change that without the approval on the zoning case. So that's just how I feel. I feel like I should be voting on these two things together.
Just to follow up on that, so am I reading this correctly, that the total units, multifamily units, which includes studio, one bedroom, two bedroom, three bedroom, that it all adds up to 406 units?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, that's a stunning number to me. So, thank you.
And actually, I meant to make another point. On slide 16 or 17, where you've got the breakdown in numbers of apartments 1, 2, and 3, there's just a small typo on that number right there. It says main building 242, 0 on second building, and the total says 272. So there's just a small typo there.
Oh, okay.
In case, when you go back out to the council for this.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. I'll be representing the comprehensive amendment case. This is a companion case that's right after this. So if it works for y'all, then I'll go ahead and just,
Great,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
This case is 2024-389 CP. It's located at 4401 North State Highway 161. Currently, the future land use has it as regional commercial, but the applicant is requesting to change it to manufacturing warehouse. After review of the case, we are recommending approval. In terms of public comment, we've received 1 in support and none in opposition. And then just the aerial of the site. And I'll go ahead and then so the zoning case, 2024-391 ZC. Currently, the zoning is State Highway 161 overlay and a generalized site plan for commercial office. They're requesting to change it to State Highway 161 overlay, but to a general site plan for light manufacturing, so ML20A. They're doing this to allow warehouse and distribution in the overlay, and as well as data center as a principal use. Again, after reviewing, we do recommend approval, and the same for the public comment, 1 in support and none in opposition. So this is the site. The site's to kind of the north, northwest, and west. This is land that's owned by the DFW Airport, and then more to the north, northeast. That is a religious institution. Currently, it is the Calvary Church, so they're planning on selling it to this applicant to kind of demo, and they're wanting to do kind of warehousing, indoor warehousing, manufacturing, and potentially a data center. And then to the south, we have a storage facility. Once again, the future land use map. And this is the zoning. So you see a lot of the repealed freeway district, some industrial park, and then down here, I believe it's for CEC. Notification map. And then this is for their site plan. So they had no variances in terms of the building or area requirements. They're only having to do a site plan is because they're wanting to do manufacturing uses in the overlay, and where it's located in the district, it's not permitted as is. So that's why they've come through and are requesting through the site plan. And this is the subject property off of, if you're on 161 Access Road, and then this is if you're off Walnut Hill. And then this is north, so that's the religious institution. This is across the street, so just the 161. And then south, so that's where this storage facility is. And then the west, and then this is the DFW airport land. And kind of another thing to talk about, since they are considering a data center, we did discuss with Encore, and let me go ahead and, so after discussing with them, they said there are electrical transmission lines that run to the north and west of the site. There are also 2 large substations within half a mile of the property. They said one can't be expanded, be connected to due to its configuration, but they did confirm that the transmissions lines on the north side are appropriate size to serve data centers. They did say, however, a detailed planning study would have to be needed to determine if an on-site substation, upgrades, or reconductors will be required. And of course, it is included in the site plan that they'll have to meet all the standards of the data center ordinance that was recently passed. And but they haven't confirmed as of yet if that's something they want to do, but it's just kind of an option if they are able to do it. Any comments or questions?
The temple to the north was part of the notification,
Yes.
so they know that this is being proposed for a change.
Yeah, let me look back. Yes, yeah,
Okay.
because they're this number 3, so they did get a notification.
Great, thank you.
The question I got is for staff. If we approve this, are they still going to fall under the proposed data center CUP, the conditional use permitting, or are we giving them the right to do so?
If short answer is no, they would not, because you'd be approving it by site plan that specifically allows for data center use. It's specifically on there. Yeah, but the standards would apply. Standards for data centers still would apply.
But they would not have to do it as we're looking at proposals for the new ordinance for the CUPs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just, I guess usually when we see these kinds of cases, there's a little bit more of a mock-up of what potentially might go on the site. So I guess do you know if the applicant has something more specific in mind, or is this just the option to have some kind of warehouse, distribution, or data center?
We kind of discussed with them is the data center more of like what they're intended to use the land for. They just kind of, from what they've told us, it's been very much of like whatever works is what we're going to go with. So I think if they can get a data center to function at that site, then they're probably going to do that. But that would be kind of something for the applicant. We kind of asked, but we kind of got the more general answer of could be a data center or it could be warehousing and distribution.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Great, thank you.
Let's see. And then I'm going to be doing this next one. So this is for a conditional use permit, so 2024-410 CUP. This is located at 7520 North MacArthur Boulevard. The current zoning is community commercial, and they're requesting a conditional use permit to allow a semi-automatic car wash in the community commercial district. After reviewing, staff recommends approval. And in terms of public comment, there's been 1 in support and none in opposition. So this is the area, the aerial. So we have it has a slush use, but it's now a Starbucks, a public storage that kind of wraps around part of it, a Kroger, and then just highway. Let's see. And then for the future land use, it is regional commercial. And this is also for the zoning. People who were notified. And then this is a map of kind of where the current car washes are. We decided to do a half-mile radius or buffer. The one to the north is like First Dot. It is kind of associated with a gas station, so there's no like vacuum stalls or like detailing. It's just, you go through the tunnel and then, you're done. And then the one to the north, further north, it's the one that's right outside the half mile. They do have detailing services, but it's also still associated with a gas station, but there's no, it's more, I believe doesn't have a lot of stalls that you do it yourself. It's more like you go through and then someone will detail your car, like an employee. And this is their site plan. Once again, this is a case where they're not asking for any variances to the building or area requirements, just to the actual use. So you see they have, if you go down here, this is where the cars would load, pay. They would go through the tunnel, and then here are all the vacuum stalls. They're providing 3 spaces for employee parking, and then they do have 1 ADA vacuum stall. This is already existing. It connects to the Starbucks that's just north, and then this would be their main entrance, or they're really their only other entrance. And so then for CUPs, the city council may permit a conditional use permit subject to appropriate conditions and safeguards when they find that, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's compatible with the existing and adjacent uses, it's compatible with and preserves the character of, adjacent development in the neighborhood, and that any negative impact has been mitigated. And then the proposed use is not materially detrimental to the public health and welfare. And additionally, per section 2.3.5E4 and 5, the city council may stipulate conditions and limitations These conditions may include, but are not limited to, time limits, limitations of building size and height, loading and parking requirements, any kind of additional landscaping, curb, sidewalk, placement, orientation of buildings, buffer yards, and then any kind of sign restrictions. So this is what's currently here. It is a office building. The suites are vacant as of now. This is to the north of the site. So it was a Schlossky's, now a Starbucks. And this is the south, so this is kind of where it starts, the public storage, and then kind of wraps around the subject property. This is west, so you have a Kroger across the street. And then, once again, the site plan. Is there any other comments or questions?
What was your radius that you used? Because there's a car wash that's being built right on 635 in the market. It's the same owner?
Yeah. We used a half-mile buffer. Let's see.
Yeah, it just missed it.
Yeah, because there's one here, and then there's kind of, I believe there's one like over here, not
There's
the same
one on
company, but there's
Beltline.
more of like a
Yeah.
full-service one.
Yeah.
Actually, across the street at Marketplace, further west from Sam's and Walmart is a Quick Quack, which is the same owner as this. So, and they just literally, they've been cleaning up that property for a while, but we approved the Quick Quack case like last March or April. It's a great-looking car wash. I'm not sure I'm in favor of it. That's my neighborhood. I feel like I'd like to see more traditional retail there, but I'm not sure what could be there. It's a shame. Is that the old Abbey Halliday building? Yeah, it's such a lovely building.
It seems like a small space. How many spots did you mention?
For the vacuum stalls, it's 21, I believe. Yeah, 21 stalls, including one ADA stall.
Thank you.
How does that design map onto the property? I thought the property was really more angled the other way, was longer along MacArthur than it was deep. Yeah.
Yeah, so like this is where that
Okay.
entrance is, and then the building would be around here, the stalls would be
Okay.
here, and then the lanes. Yeah.
All right.
So this is really where you self-detail, right?
Yeah.
That's why you've got the stalls for it? Because I
Exactly.
would be worried about traffic otherwise in MacArthur, which is horrendous in general. Is this part of LCA?
No.
Okay, and then the other question I have is, why do a CUP if there's no term limit on it that you're recommending?
We required, when we did the conditional use permit uses a year or so ago, we required car washes by conditional use permit just to give the opportunity to review them case by case.
But if I'm correct, like she said, it says approval with indefinite time frame. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's our recommendation. I mean, it's, a conditional use permit does have the ability to set a time on it. It's a little more of an investment, a permanent investment, so that's why indefinite really is the default for a conditional use
But
permit.
wasn't our CUP set up to review and council can see what's going on, if it's disturbance to the neighborhood, traffic or anything like that, and then they can come back and extend the time or do whatever it is?
So it had two things. It allowed a time period if that's what you and council especially chose to do. And it also allows for revocation. So if there is an indefinite time period and for some reason it's not behaving well, then that is always an option if it gets trashy or something. But whenever there's an investment like this where it's difficult to change to another use, that's when we recommend the indefinite time period. But again, the conditional use permit for this situation, or car washes in general, were to trigger review each time, not particularly to set a time limit. But a time limit is an option with a conditional use permit.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I just want to make 2 points as I'm thinking about this. I mean, one is I'm a bit concerned about the proliferation of car washes. I mean, we've seen, I don't know the exact number, but it seems like quite a few. But I think more on the point is I'm getting hung up on just considering the compatibility with the character of the neighborhood. And that area, I mean, kind of along the lines of what you said, more traditional retail, it just doesn't strike me as a good fit for that area.
In the event that these owners for the car wash would sell, what would that CUP, would the conditional use permit be transferred over, or what would they be able to put on there?
Yeah, conditional use permit is a use, so it's going to be tied to the site plan specifically. So as long as it continues in that form with no changes, then the use can continue.
Only the car wash, though?
Yes,
Use-
as is.
As is? Okay, thank you.
But with a new owner, it could.
And there's also, if there's a lapse in use as well, then that can go away as well, yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Great, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jason Gillis presenting zoning case 2024-428-CC. This is currently located at 1500 North Loop 12. It is originally zoned, currently zoned COU2, Commercial Outdoor 2, and the applicant is wanting to rezone to SP2, COU2, Generalized Site Plan, Commercial Outdoor 2, with equipment sales and rental as a permitted use and variances to the front yard setback, parking setback, and screening requirements. Staff does recommend approval, and we have seen no letters in support or in opposition. So here is the aerial map showing the 2.42 acre site that is currently right now an auto repair business, and the applicant, Briggs Equipment, is wanting to rezone this property to allow equipment rentals, which is a similar use to the property south of them. The reason you have to see this today is because in Commercial Outdoor 2, it does allow for outside storage and does allow for display for auto and truck rentals, but it does not allow for equipment sales and equipment rentals. So that is why they are needing the site plan to be able to add that use. Additionally, for the variances, since this is on North Loop 12, there was an expansion which created them having to get a new expansion because of them going into their 30-foot setback. So originally they had a 30-foot setback, then Loop 12 took an acquisition, and when that happens, they are illegal until they get a zoning case where they're having to bring it up to code. So that's why they're needing certain variances for the setbacks for Loop 12. Here is the future land use showing industrial, the surrounding zoning, which is mostly industrial with a little bit of commercial, the 200-foot notification buffer, the site plan, and then here's the variances to get a better understanding. So for State Highway Loop 12, we have 33A, which adds a different requirement for setbacks compared to our additional Commercial Outdoor 2, which requires a 30-foot, and due to the acquisition, the building is now 2 feet away from the property line. So they're not wanting to change the building at all, so they're needing to bring it up to the current standards with the variance. And then also due to any future expansion, based on where their building is oriented, they would go by a 25-foot setback. Even though the State Highway Loop 12 requires 30 feet, 25 feet is the requirement for Commercial Outdoor 2 zoning. And they're needing a parking setback due to the acquisition, which is creating a 0 feet because their parking is right next to their property line. And the screening is due to their equipment, so since if they're wanting to put the fence in the front setback, that a maximum is 4 feet, so they're just trying to allow to have a maximum 8-foot tall fence. Here's the subject property showing the current site. They're wanting to keep the building the same, but just to be able to do equipment sales. Here's the subject property from East Guawala Road. Here's the south subject property, show the equipment sales and rentals south of them. And then here's east of subject property, which is a warehouse. And then this is showing the highway. The highway is elevated, but they're right next to the service road. So they're not right next to the highway, they're right next to the service road right there. And then here's the site plan, and staff does recommend approval for this. We received no other comments from any other departments, but traffic did state that they had to adhere to the traffic manual if they're to make any changes or any expansions. And I'll be happy to answer any comments or questions.
You mentioned that there was talk about a variance in order to be able to have future buildings.
Yes.
It's a pretty small piece of property at this point. Do do they have a plan for a future building? I didn't really see why we would be doing a variance for that, since I don't see why they'd be putting another building.
Do you want me to answer?
They don't necessarily have one right now, but we don't want to necessarily give them a, 2-foot setback variance for any future buildings. But it is a smaller site, it is more constricted than it was originally. So we're owing to that, saying any future buildings, if they redeveloped this site, then 25-foot setback would be appropriate to this site.
So if we ran across a situation like the hotel, for instance, if this place burns down, can they build back to that 2-foot setback, or are they gonna have to meet the current building requirements?
No, only the current buildings could. So if it burned down, it would have to be built back to the 25 foot.
25,
Yeah.
Because it's not
So
a,
basically,
yeah.
we're just giving a variance just for the existing structure.
Correct.
Only.
yes,
And any modifications, any changes, anything done to it, they will have to meet current requirements, correct?
Well, would need to meet the 25.
Correct.
So they'd still have a 5-foot reduction from the current
Yeah.
requirements, but not the 28-foot reduction.
yeah.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you. All right. Then we are on to item number 5. UDC amendments, review of ordinance for data centers by CUP.
Well, good afternoon again. Bring to you for discussion data centers and potential changes, as Ricky knows, mentioned before. Just as a reminder, the data center standards were approved back in June. And as you know, data centers are kind of their own animal compared to anything else, and they have their own set of issues compared to anything else. We have 3 sites that are already allowed by SP2 that specifically allow data centers in this specific language on Longhorn, Customer Way, and University of Dallas property. There's one data center that is in existence off 505 North Wildwood that did not need variances at the time, so it did not have a site plan specifically. So that would be considered, if any changes were adopted, it would be considered a legal nonconforming. We brought this to council on September 12th, some changes that they wanted to look at, and their direction was to go forward with a CUP option. Basically would say that all data centers would be permitted only through a conditional use permit process in the districts that it currently allows. So instead of being allowed by right in these districts, it would be allowed only by conditional use permit in these districts. And considerations for a conditional use permit, again, it requires P&Z and council public hearings, as you know from tonight, and it can, in theory, be temporary and can set time limits. However, it is likely that it will not meet the conditions of time limits for data centers. But it could be revoked if it meets findings and per requirements elsewhere in the conditional use permit section. The reason time limits wouldn't really apply to data centers is because it's not a temporary or interim use. And it would be, it's hard to say that the health, safety, and welfare would not be adequately protected without a time limit restriction. The initial approval process, again, you saw this earlier tonight, has to be consistent and compatible with the existing area, has to meet all the supplemental use standards. That means all of the standards of Section 320, the data center development standards, compatible with and preserve the character and integrity of the surrounding development. Negative impact would be mitigated and is not materially detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding area. It could be revoked. There would be periodic review of the CUP. If determined that noncompliance of some standard is found, the director can give written notice for the nature of the violation, and they have between 10 and 30 days to remedy that violation. If they don't, we can start the revocation process, and basically there would be a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. It would be they'd look at public testimony, police records, et cetera, and council would make a final determination whether or not to revoke the CUP. The revocation considerations, the council may revoke, does not have to, may revoke a CUP if it's one or more of the following. If the circumstances have changed, alterations or enlargements were done without approval, that would be highly unlikely in the case of data centers. Violation of any provision in the site plan, that would be the CUP site plan, to clarify that. The CUP was obtained by fraud or deception. If the use was suspended or ceased for 180 days or longer, or was in violation of any other applicable statute or detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare, or considered a nuisance. So what we're proposing to bring forward will be basically a repeal and replace, be readoption of the development standards. We would repeal the old ordinance, replace it basically with all the same development standards. Basically just, it kind of makes this all clean by doing it this way. And also, it would take everything that was allowed by right in those districts would now be allowed by conditional use permit. So proposed changes are here. Data center allowed by right in commercial warehouse, the light industrial districts, and the commercial park district. That's currently what would be proposed, is it would be allowed by CUP in the commercial warehouse, light industrial, and commercial park district, and in a district that currently has a SP1 or SP2 zoning that specifically allows for data center. Other changes, there are just a couple really small ones since we're going in and cleaning up. We're going to clean up a couple little things with this. We're going to clarify the definition for maximum height. There's no change. It's the maximum height is staying the same. It's just the way it would end up being worded in the final document was kind of confusing. So we're just kind of clarifying it and simplifying the language in that. And then off-street parking, had typographical errors, so it gives us a chance to clean that up as well. So we're presenting this to you for discussion today. We would have to send notes to the local newspaper. It'd be the Rambler on the 14th for publication on the 18th. That's 15 days before a P&Z meeting. On the 16th, we're going to bring this to the City Council work session for final authorization. If they grant us final authorization, at that point, we'll do the really expensive part, which is mailing the 6,000 plus postcards that are required due to state law changes in 2023. That's 10 days before the P&Z meeting. That would be February 3rd for the P&Z, February 6th for City Council. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So one of the things you highlighted was that it might not meet the criteria for it needing to be a temporary or interim use. But we just discussed this issue with the car washes. Is this any different than with that? Because that having a CUP for a car wash within a definite time period?
I think it's even, you could make the case for a car wash. It's like on steroids kind of level of investment, much higher.
But it's the same
You're
issue.
talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure investment that you have to put in. That's not temporary or interim in no way, shape, or form. So you could put it, in theory, on a car wash if you wanted to. It would be really hard, and I'll let Carolyn jump in if she wants to justify doing it with a data center given the amount of infrastructure investment that goes in.
I'll just say that Ken got that exactly right. I mean, the same criteria would have to be established through findings by the city council for time limits for the car wash case. The reason that, as Jocelyn mentioned before, that's a CUP is so that you can evaluate things like the clustering and the location, as opposed to necessarily the time limit issue. There's a lot of different ways that tool can be used in addition to just the time limit. But the basics of establishing that groundwork to limit it, it's hard to say that it's minimal construction for that type of use for a data center.
I totally get the concerns. I can also see the rationale of wanting the city council to have the ability to evaluate data centers in the future, just given that it's a bit of a new frontier, but I get it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is to limit data centers and for them to be presented to us on a case-by-case basis as they approach?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha. Thank you.
I think this is a pretty thoughtful approach, requiring the CUP. That way, we don't get flooded with data centers that are saying they can build by right. So I think this is pretty practical.
I support the cup for the data centers. I think that some of the wording, we probably want to make sure we're clarifying, because some of the complaints that we've had from other residents and stuff like that is their quality of life. They're concerned about noise. We have some now that violate. What is going to be the teeth behind it to make sure that when they are violating a noise ordinance or their generators or whatever they're putting on the building? And we've had issues with Encore as far as making sure that these areas that these things are going in has enough electricity transmission to supply the neighborhoods around it and these facilities.
Could you go back to the timing, Ken, if you would, please?
To which one, I'm sorry?
The timing, the calendar of events between now and
Yeah.
February 3rd? Okay, so one of the things, mailing the 600 postcards, since this is an unusual, 6,000, pardon me, this is an unusual case, and our constituents have been vocal about where these data centers are. Could we provide a little bit more time for the notices to be mailed and received, and understanding that people might be traveling? You know, the one at Neiman Marcus showed up over a holiday, and so people were up in arms about that. There's no holiday between the 23rd and the 3rd, but I'm just wondering if maybe we could send out the notice and really allow it time to drop before.
And following up on that, if I remember correctly, these are the notices that the time we did them before, we had a lot of people who were unsure because of the statutory language.
Yes.
That is
Is
less
that
clear than it
Senate
might be.
Bill 929,
Yeah,
yes.
that extra time actually would be really nice in terms of being able to give a chance, because I know that when that happened, I seem to recall, Jocelyn, then once you were able to talk to the people and sort of explain what was really going on, they were able to realize we weren't doing anything or even considering something that was really concerning to them, or at least for most of them. But the statutory language in the postcard
It's inflammatory.
is inflammatory, yes. And so, yeah, anything we could do to help to reduce that stress, obviously we want people who do have a concern to be able to come forward and know and have adequate time to know, advance notice to be able to be here and speak and be at council and speak. But also for those who it's not an issue, that they don't worry that there's something happening that's not really happening.
So we are moving forward based on the schedule that was requested of us.
Okay.
If council wants to alter that schedule, then they can give us direction when we come back to them on the 16th.
Okay.
And as for the education, we do have a web page that hopefully won't have to do a lot of these big mail outs, but if we do, that, we can only fit so much on a postcard. So we have a QR code that will bring them to a full web page that has all the details about that and, everything they're looking for. So I think that's why the last one went pretty smoothly, because the people who wanted to know had the opportunity to go and get some more information and see what was really being done.
I know that we have looked at other cities and states and stuff like that, looking at these data centers. I mean, we've discussed it. Is there any other city or state using the method that we're proposing right now? Or is this just modified sort of between all of them?
I don't know I could say one way or the other on that.
From what we can tell, other places, especially in Loudoun County, Virginia, I think is the one that keeps coming up. They have standards, but they're also, as the data centers are starting to grow, they're also feeling the pains from them as well, and just trying to respond to the issues that they are bringing up. So this is kind of one of those things where the technology is 1 foot out in front of everybody, and everybody's just going to try to just continue to adjust, because we all need data centers, we all use the cloud, but on the other hand, we also have to live together. So that's the thing, that's a balance that everybody's trying to find.
I've seen in Virginia, a couple places are thinking about going to issuing, I think they call them special use permits. It's not quite the same thing. And again, what something is called in Texas versus what's called in Virginia may be completely different meaning. But essentially, site plan zoning is essentially what they're looking to do in certain areas of Virginia, so.
Yeah, I was mainly just looking at the process of how we're putting it together, how we're presenting it, and if this has worked for other cities, et cetera.
So I think to your point, at one of our other meetings, one of the other local cities said that they send those notices out earlier. So I think that's why Ricky's bringing that up. But my question was, I couldn't remember in June when we worked on this ordinance before, did we put a distance from residents? We did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It ended up being 300 feet is what
Okay.
council approved, and that would be continued on. All the standards are being carried forward. There's not going to be any substantive change to any of the standards.
Okay, and it was straight line, right? It wasn't around the corner.
Yeah, it's not an alcohol measurement. It's just.
All right. Well, I was just going to amplify the concerns about notice and folks having an opportunity to process the information. I guess my recommendation would be if there's a way to communicate to City Council in their own work session that several P&Z commissioners voiced a concern about the amount of time notice, that would probably be helpful. Otherwise, we may be revisiting the issue on the 3rd as part of our recommendation if we think there needs to be more time. So I think that's important.
And
I
now,
agree with Daniel.
and now question, the mail-outs, who are receiving those postcards? Is it owners that are currently owned?
So the map.
Wait, oh, the map.
Senate Bill 929, all property owners on the latest tax roll,
Okay.
all occupants, so basically the tenants.
Oh, wow.
And all owners of business personal property. So that brought us to 6,000 something. I think we have, 2,200 something properties, but then you put in all of the, we're going to have to go, this is all, I look at him because he's my GIS guy, all the suites, and we do our best to try to pull all of those points out. And, yeah, even the BPP is interesting to try to call out of the appraisal district information.
Yeah, anyone with an interest on.
Your
any of the
microphone.
property. Okay, anyone with an ownership or tenant interest on any of the properties shown, covered
Right.
on the map.
So currently, those that are zoned, they have the right from now until we make a decision to put a data center without any sort of, or no?
Well,
Yes.
yes, they have the right, the way it's interpreted today, as long as they meet all the standards of, that were set last June.
Okay.
But the people getting noticed are people who, because the regulation, the notice regulation was, if anybody's going to be made non-conforming by an action, then they need to be sent notice of that.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you. All right, then on to item number 6. Oh, good. Mr. Okay. All right.
Good evening. My name's Troy Wynn, Senior Planner in the Planning and Zoning Department. And here to go over this evening a few proposed amendments to the future land use plan. As you all know, the Imagine Irving Comprehensive Plan was adopted back in 2017, and with it is a future land use map. If you'd like, we can go through the individual land use categories, or we can go right into the proposed changes. All right. All right. So most of these changes that we're going to be proposing are just corrections to what was put together in 2017. For instance, this here, our first proposed change is to recognize that Gilbert and Good Elementary schools are actually school sites instead of traditional neighborhood locations, that we would like them to remain school sites for the future of the city. And so here you see on the left you have the existing future land use map, and on the right you will see the proposed change. We're just going from traditional neighborhood to public and semi-public on this site. Okay. Here we have a similar case where a school site was marked as traditional neighborhood. Would like it to be recognized, the Kincaid Elementary Childhood School, the pre-K site there, as a school site long-term. And also just north of it is the Xander Park Apartments, which in our multifamily analysis that we did earlier last year, ranked very high as a site that needs to be preserved because of the number of households there, the proximity to grocery stores, parks. It's a good location for housing. We'd like to preserve that as a mid-density residential area as well. Then on Markland Street, south of Nimitz High School, in the Imagine Irving plan, this was inadvertently marked as a traditional neighborhood. It's actually zoned RZL instead of the R6 or R6 or the R75. So it's a little bit more compact. So we'd like to mark it as a compact neighborhood. The compact neighborhood allows RZL zoning. It also lets you go up to duplex or quadplex, but what we'd really like to do is just keep it at the RZL in case anything gets rebuilt there, just preserving that level of density. Then up here off of Hackberry Creek, we've got 3 single-family homes that were accidentally marked as part of the golf course. And so we want to mark them as single-family homes. Likewise up here on Country Club, in the middle of this multifamily site, it's actually a condo site. Some of the condo units were inadvertently marked as compact neighborhood. We'd like to mark them as actually mid-density residential like the rest of the site. So it's just little errors like that we're trying to clean up for the most part. Then up on La Villita, we had kind of a flip-flop situation where an area of townhomes was marked as multifamily, and a multifamily site was marked as compact neighborhood, which would be townhomes. And we want to flip those back and forth, as shown here on the right. And then La Vida Elementary School was marked as a compact neighborhood, and we'd like to mark that as a public, semi-public school site. On Pioneer, we've got a little single-family neighborhood that was overlooked when we did the Imagine Irving plan, and it was split between the apartments next door and the the cemetery on the other side. We'd like to go ahead and carve that out and note that that is actually a single-family neighborhood and should remain so. And up on Rue de Ville, we've got a townhome development that was marked for mid-density. We don't really want to increase the density of that site by allowing it to be redeveloped as apartments. So I'd like to go ahead and mark that as compact neighborhood. On Bethlehem Street off of Pioneer, we've got a townhome development next to some commercial sites, and an entire row of townhomes was accidentally marked as part of that regional commercial site. So we'd like to go ahead and mark those as compact neighborhood to reflect that that's a townhome location. And this here is up on LBJ off of MacArthur. This is the backside of the Target shopping center, and it's been marked as compact neighborhood, but there's actually a location of several small retail sites. So we want to go ahead and mark that as being part of that regional commercial node instead of encouraging redevelopment at a location where it really doesn't make sense. And those are all pretty much corrections, just minor errors and oversights. Now, right here off of, this here is the Salvation Army site off of Grawweiler and Britton Road. And one of the things that our future land use categories allow is traditional neighborhood is allowed to have retail sites at arterials, local serving retails, barber shops, laundromats, things of that nature. And our regional commercial designation is really for big box retailers, car lots, things that are supposed to pull customers from neighboring cities or across the entire city. But right now, the Salvation Army and the surrounding retail sites are marked as regional commercial, and that's not really a good, let's draw people from Dallas location. So we'd like to mark those sites as local commercial for the Salvation Army and the adjacent site to the east. And then the church and the small retail next to it, marked that as traditional neighborhood, so that if that is ever converted, that becomes residential or local serving retail. And then I believe this is the final one that we're looking at tonight, but off of Schoaf, when TxDOT was doing its right-of-way expansion, they took possession of this property, and as such, it ceased to exist in the tax roll. It was no longer a parcel. And so in anticipation of it perhaps being sold back into the private market, we'd like to go ahead and mark it as regional commercial in conformance with the adjacent uses. And so those are the sites that we are looking to have changes on. If you have any questions.
So just for clarification, these aren't zoning changes, these are just corrections to the comprehensive plan, so.
Right. If anybody wanted to change the zoning, what this does is say, okay, well, that zoning request is appropriate or inappropriate. It conforms to the future land use plan.
Okay.
So, yeah, this doesn't give anybody any authority to flip their use, but it says what we're looking at as being appropriate
Right,
for that
future
site.
land use. Okay, thank you.
I just have a comment. I just want to thank you guys for identifying these and cleaning them up. I think this is going to be good. Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
So we do plan to bring these to you at your next meeting for consideration, for your recommendation, and then we'll take them to city council for approval.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Pritchard? Or
Oh, just, Troy, one quick question for you. On this plan, I know we've evaluated this use several times in several of these. We've recategorized them. I agree with Priscilla. This is a lot of work. It's very detail-oriented, and all these corrections seem to make sense to me. But has it been since 2017 that we actually did the comprehensive plan? And is there a reason to change that or update it? You're smiling. Sorry. That was an innocent question, I
Oh, you want
swear.
me to-
But it just
Okay.
seems like that's a while ago, in my
All
opinion.
right. Ideally, we would do an update every 5 years. We have had several presentations to City Council proposing an update. At this point, we are looking at doing a rewrite in about 3 more years with a different focus, with more of a kind of looking at the fiscal impact kind of approach. In terms of looking at the future land use map, this is one of, we basically have 26, 27 sites that would look like to change right now. A dozen sites seems to be about the most you can handle in a single meeting. So we've got another 14, 15 to look at here in another few months. Once this group is cleared, the others are a little more complicated. So we are constantly looking at the future land use map to update. We will start gearing up for a redo of the comprehensive plan if council approves that approach. So
Do mail lots also, are mail lots also notified to the owners of those properties?
no, this here is administrative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no entitlements tied to this, so there's no notice required.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Okay, on to item number 7. Any future agenda items anybody would like to bring up for proposal for another meeting? Commissioner Pritchard?
Yes, we got an email today, I believe, April, you might have sent out, that had, I know small, I couldn't read it all, in terms of dates and deadlines for submitting cases to P and Z. And I thought we've had one in the past, I guess this is for a calendar year. I think the one I had marked on, it said 24, it didn't say 25. But are you guys gonna be pretty tight? People, they gotta get it in by a certain date to give you time, legal and P and Z time to process it, as opposed to us getting here on Monday night and having 5 or 6 other things being added?
So what you get on your meeting nights are the correspondence. So we're tight on our deadline dates and when plats have to get in, when the site plans have to get in. We're tight on all those. But we can't, if someone wants to submit opposition or support, we don't say no a week early. So
No, I
that
understand.
what you get, I mean, rarely are you gonna get like a late plat or something like that. Sometimes people are able to make corrections at the last minute to take it from a disapproval to an approval.
Right.
But for the most part, the papers that you get are the correspondence that you do need to have for your public hearing.
Well, I can remember several cases where, without mentioning names, a particular agent comes in at the last minute and brings us additions to a plan for that night. And even residents have come in and just got it that night. And I've always believed that, if you have your deadlines, because once they know that if it's supposed to be on a week before and it comes in after that, you say, I'll have to wait till next month. That's only gonna happen once or twice, and the word will get out. If you have your deadline in Irving, it's gonna be, that's the deadline.
We do. I mean, you're always going to have, again, some others, but in terms of the zoning, if the zoning's not ready, zoning doesn't go forward. What you typically see are the plats when they may need to change some scrivener's, adjustments or something, and they just, I mean, there's a state law, we have to take them if they're ready to go. We will prepare them for disapproval. If we get something before your Monday meeting that meets it, then we want to get that approved. We want to get that process closed. But in terms of the zoning, if it's not ready to go, then we will sometimes put it on the agenda and say it has to be postponed or whatever, but people shouldn't be standing at the podium and changing your site
I
plans
think
on
you know what I'm talking about.
I do, and we have a much tighter schedule than we had several years ago.
I actually was at that P and Z workshop and they discussed that. And what the instructor was mentioning is like, yes, you can receive it, but it's really not considered at that point. So how does, like in that case, since it's still presented to us, is it considered whenever it was previously presented? Or is it just like, here's their rite of passage for expressing their comment?
So if you get something, it's completely appropriate to postpone it and give staff time to work with them to understand what the differences are.
Right.
You shouldn't be expected to consider changes at the time that you're making the decision. So postponement is completely appropriate in that situation.
Right, okay, thank you.
Just real quick, did we firm up the February date? Because I thought that was in play, and I see it's scheduled for February 3rd.
February 3rd is your standing date. The other dates were some dates I asked you to hold in case we need to have some called work sessions or a couple of meetings, and so those are still out there.
We're still holding.
Yes, so February 3rd is your standing date, though.
Do you mind? I need a little refresher on the CUP. Just from an administrative standpoint, how does the city manage that? Do you have when you review CUPs, do you do it by the date that it was approved? Do you trace it for that date, or do you just say every 2 years on January 31st, we're going to review every CUP? Or do you do it only when you get complaints? Just administratively, how does that work?
So anytime there's a complaint for a CUP, we would always check it at that time. If there is a deadline set, an expiration set, we have it triggered. It's either 90 days or 6 months. I think we kicked it back to 6 months in the permit system from the date of approval. So in the date of council approval, they would have, say it's a 3-year expiration. So at 2.5 years, we would generate a report that would show anybody that we need to send notices to and just tell them it's time for you to come back through and be, submit for reconsideration. That's the way we have it set up.
Any future agenda items?
Yeah, two things. Is there a way we can get some sort of carport ordinance set up that city council's in agreeing with if it meets a certain criteria that it could be through, first thing? Second thing is, are we able to do like the smaller variances and stuff like that where we could have something where it could be staffed necessarily instead of bringing us little variances and stuff like that?
Make me smile, Ricky. The carports, council has requested we bring them back again. So we have them scheduled currently for the February 6th, I think, P&D meeting, if it stays on schedule. So we do have it queued up for that. It just depends on if, how full that agenda gets. February 6th, P&D, so the council, so the Planning and Development Committee of Council, yeah. So if they give us the go-ahead, then we would do, the work session with y'all and then come back. So it'd probably be early April that you would see it next, possibly. It just depends on the turnover. As for the amendments, we have administrative amendments. We have a whole section on those that have some wiggle room. A few years ago, we amended those. There's like 5%, 10% play, because once somebody goes to permit, often you need, there's things change on the site, so you do need a little bit of wiggle room. So we do have some, but often the ones that you see are not enough. And just, that's the process we have here in Irving, is they go through the site plan process for variances. So if you wanted to give more wiggle room, we can always amend the ordinance, but right now, I'm just bound to what we have on our code.
All I would ask is you present it to the city council and see if they're willing to give us more wiggle room.
I'm not sure that we get to choose their agenda. It's our agenda items we're supposed to be adding to. All right. Anything else? Okay. Then we are adjourned at 6:45 p.m. and we will meet up for the evening session at 7.